I wasn't always a Christian. I became a
Wow.
Christian. And the Lord had to bring me down to rock bottom. I was talking about I was in college and I left college and I thought I was going to do my own thing. And, once you become homeless and you just live out of your car, you come to realize that, I made some pretty bad choices. And, maybe I should, give Jesus Christ a chance, let him work. So I did. I said, Lord, if you can change my life and make it better, I will always honor you. I will always praise you. Whatever I do, I'll give glory to you because it's not me. I already know what I can do. I can make it into the back of a car.
Pour out on us, O Lord, we pray, a spirit of truth, understanding, and peace, that we may know with all our hearts what is pleasing to you, and with one accord pursue what we have come to know through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Well, that was
How
awesome.
you doing, brother?
Doing good. So, yeah, just getting ready to get all these orders out for the Christmas rush. Coming up with some new
Nice.
things and really just enjoying the holiday season. I'm very happy that Trump won the election, so that makes it
Yeah, that
even
was a good
better.
one.
So that's a little gift that we get to unwrap this year.
Oh yeah, I noticed it. Like it just calmed everything down. The election results, just the whole world. I feel like the temperature just dropped a little bit.
Yeah, I've noticed with like our customers and just people that I talk to in my circles, everyone just feels much more relaxed. We have hope. See, that's the
Yes.
biggest thing is having hope
Yeah.
and understanding that things can get better and there's still a path for this nation to be great again, as Trump always says.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, and part of that was like it was such a relief that the election. I mean, we were all very scared about how is this going to go? Is this going to take months? Like, so it was that was such a relief. So this knife is
Yes, that's the,
now
I think that's the
officially.
contractor, correct?
That's the contractor. Yeah, you sent me the contractor and the smuggler. My dad and I have been kind of switching off. This is I love fixed blades. This is the first time that I've worn it on my belt, and I love it.
Well, that's good to hear.
Yeah,
The contractor is pretty cool because it's like actually one of our first little fixed blades that we actually did in a really thick steel. So you can look at the spine on that. That's like almost quarter inch between 3/16 and quarter inch. So it's really thick. But the good thing about it is because of the way we grind it, gives you a really good edge with that MagnaCut,
yeah.
and it allows you to do so many different jobs with such a stout little blade in the hand, and it feels good in the hand.
Oh, it fits perfectly. I wear it like on my hip, but I notice I don't conceal carry, but I noticed a lot of guys who do put their fixed blades like on in the back.
Yeah, scout carry. Yeah, and
What
you could
so
do it with
you have a
that
preference?
knife. Yeah, for
What's
for
that?
me, this knife is really unique. So what you can do with this knife, you can carry it scout carry, and you,
Okay.
you can carry it upright on your hip. But we're sending them with ulti clips, so you can convert them and carry them in your pocket. So it's almost like a little suspender. So you can carry them in your pocket, inside your waistband, like on your backpack. You can clip them on. So these things, every knife comes with this new versatility and carry.
That was one of the questions I was gonna have. I was gonna ask you too. I installed the clip. It was very straightforward. And
Yeah.
I need to do that some more. That's something that I'm gonna test out some more. I just love having and this is Pyrex, right? The
Oh, okay. So that is Kydex, and it
Kydex.
is a
Sorry.
yeah, yeah. No, no. There's so many different sheath materials now. They got Bortec and they got Bortrac, all this stuff. Kydex. So we like that one, and plus you have a carbon fiber pattern with it. But it's really strong. I mean that stuff. It's almost stab proof.
Yeah.
It molds to the knife really well, and it can handle cold conditions pretty good.
So this is like I mean you're a hunter, right?
Yes. In
So this
fact, we
is
went
like
hunting.
perfect.
Oh yeah, that one's we actually use that one, and we have a video. So our new Steadfast model. So we went hunting. Me and my brother, we got drawn for a bull elk, and
Wow.
it's a good story because we went out there. We were in 5A. This is in Arizona, so that's about around Happy Jack, and man, we saw a ton of cows. I mean, but we're looking for a bull. I mean, we're just like, oh, come on. So we on day one we see a spike horn, and my brother goes to take a shot, but it kind of senses us. It starts moving, so we miss that. It takes off, but most of the time we don't see anything. And so, I'm just getting to the point where, like, man, this is our last day. He's got his, the dad, his kid is out there. My son was out there. And, I just started praying. I said, you know what, Lord? I'm just not getting it this year. I don't know why, but I'm not. I need some help, So please send me, if you will it, send me a bull elk. So we're walking on this path, and we've already gone around Potato Lake, and we're coming back up, and we're all tired. And my brother's walking with his son, and I just happened to look to my right, and there's this massive bull elk within like 20 yards from me, just standing. He's a little bit higher than me, and he's just staring at me. And I'm staring at him, and I tell my brother, "Stop!" It's quiet, but as excited as you can. And so he stops, and so. But in that moment, I learned something because I hesitated. I shouldn't have hesitated. And so I'm starting to bring my rifle up. I finally get set. And as soon as I do, I'm just looking down the scope and he takes off. I'm like, oh man, I missed that opportunity. 5 seconds, I hesitated that 5 seconds. If I had that back and just went boom, I mean, it would have been easy because, I mean, he was like 20 yards. And so we're walking back the whole day where we're talking about it. And I even told my brother, the Lord brought the blessing. I mean, he answered the prayer.
Yep.
It was my end that I hesitated, and I shouldn't have hesitated. Sometimes we do that. Our blessings come, and we're not ready to receive them, and that's on our end. So I told my brother, and we talked about different things that we could do. He says next time I see one, I'm going to go prone, and I'm going to make sure that I don't miss that shot. I'm not going to hesitate. And I said, a great idea. So. We're driving around. We're getting to the area where we're getting ready to hunt at. It's evening. It's coming up to evening. It's about 5 o'clock, and I pray again. I say, Lord, you did awesome. You brought it. It was on me. I missed it. It was right there. I wasn't ready, but if you will it, just one more time. I mean, I would love to get. I mean, at least me or my brother. So I'm praying in the truck. He pulls off and he starts hiking a little ways. And I see him just stop. And, we're in the woods and he just stops. He drops down prone. He goes and bang, you hear that shot. And it was right there. Because if he had waited, I would say 3 more minutes, I don't think we would be able to tell the difference. So that was the last day, 3 minutes into it if he had hesitated, and he nailed it. Perfect shot. And he had an area to shoot. His window was that because it was through trees and such. So he had these trees, and that was his only window. So he managed to get it right at the end. And I was thanking the Lord. And I was like, man, God, does give us second chances, but we have to remember from the first chance. It's kind of like a trial that don't hesitate. Come in and receive your blessing.
I love that's beautiful. I love that, and that the moral of that story is just incredible, because it is sort of an example, or it is definitely an example of like finding the unseen in the scene, and prayer is just so powerful. It's
Yeah.
and I love that it's like it didn't happen on the first one.
No.
But it was there. There's your answer, and then it's
Yeah.
like, okay, maybe let's focus in a little more. I really enjoy that it's never like too easy. I think if it were
No.
too easy, we wouldn't learn those lessons.
And that's the thing. It's never going to be just dropped in your lap. That's
Yeah.
just not life. I always look at our Father in heaven and Jesus Christ as always teaching us. Like
Yeah.
I'm a parent. I have 3 boys, And, you're always looking to teach them on how to do things. It may be difficult. And sometimes you're watching them, you're like, oh man, oh gosh. I mean, if I just step in here, this is so much easier. No,
Yeah.
but you have to have them do it. And you can't get in the way. And so you let them
Yeah.
do it unless they ask you for help. If they do ask you for help, then you can come in and you can give them guidance. And I think that's exactly what God teaches us. And we have two choices too. We have two choices looking at that situation. I missed that opportunity the first time with the bull elk. And I could say, God, you didn't answer. I didn't get that. I don't understand what's happening. I mean, he didn't put me in the perfect situation, the perfect area, and he ran off. So, I mean, that really wasn't answering my prayer. And you could look over all this, or you could say, oh, I'm a failure. I'm this and that, or start to have a pity party for yourself. Or you can analyze the situation. You say, you know what? He answered my prayer. What can I do better? Because I know that my God is faithful. And he'll give me
Yeah.
another chance if I ask him. And what I can
Yeah.
do better to receive that blessing at that time. And luckily in this situation, it ended up working out. And that guy was a toad, man. He was huge. And so we all got to work together and skinning him out. And it was a good family affair. And it was so funny because it was already late. And so it was, we did the gutless. We got him the gut sack, but we still had to put him on there on the truck. We didn't quarter him yet. And so that took me, Dennis, Dad, and his little son to push that that big bull elk into the back of the truck, and we managed it. And so it worked out really good, and it was a great experience for the kids, and it was a good experience for us. So hunting is awesome. It's amazing if you're willing to learn.
It's so cool that like that team right there, that's Dawson Knives. I
Yeah.
mean, I know you guys are more than that, but you're such a family centered company. And that's beyond the fact that these are the finest knives I've encountered. You guys really have this, like, it's oriented from the family and starting with your dad. So I'd love to hear just sort of the chronology of your dad and how the company came to life.
Yeah, so what really happened is so it's two brothers that started the business. So you have Barry and Dane, and they started this business. Barry just came back from Vietnam and wondering what they're going to do with their lives. Barry was an electrician, so that's what he did. And so they're thinking about like different career paths. And, Dane goes up and says, hey, I have two options for you. You want to do jewelry or do you want to do knives? And Barry's like, I ain't doing jewelry. So it's going to be knives. So we're going to do knives. And so they started knife making, and they didn't have anything. They were completely poor. The first grinders that they built were out of shopping cart wheels, was
Wow.
any parts they can find out of the they would go to the dump sites and see whatever they can pull out for parts. They worked in a storage shed that you rent, and that's where they started. And so there's two guys that were hitting shows and trying to make the best products that they can make at the time. And that was back in 1973. And so they came from there, moved out here to Prescott, Arizona, and from a 20 by 20 garage, that's where this business mostly was until about 10 years ago.
Wow.
And so it was always a family affair. Everybody was in. I'm second generation. I started going in at about age 19. Started making knives, started learning how to do things. I went to college for about a year and a half. I studied microelectronic engineering, and I decided I didn't want to do that. I mean, it wasn't because I wasn't good at it. It's just because I didn't want to dedicate my life forever to Intel. Nothing wrong with
Yeah.
that. I mean, some people do. One of my brothers followed that path. It just wasn't for me. I wanted to work with my hands. I wanted to make something that I could be proud of. And so going into that family business and saying, I can make this. This is a part of me. So this is something that I believe in. So we worked hard in this family business. There was a lot of trials, especially during 2008. You know, you had the Great Recession. That really hurt our business. We didn't think we were going to make it, but we survived that. And now, here we are today, and I have three young men, my sons, and everyone in the family here works here at Dawson Knives. My three sons, one's 17, 15, and 13, even the 13-year-old after school comes. And they all do different things. And so we've learned in these over 50 years of working, being a family business, and me 22 years, how to work with each other. I mean, there are days that we're just like, man. Yeah. But that's my brother. That's my brother, or that's my sister. And you know, and not only that, but I think the most important thing for a family business to survive, honestly, today, is to have Christ at the center. Because then there's a lot of forgiveness, there's a lot of understanding, and there's a lot of care and selflessness instead of being caught in selfishness. And that's usually what ends up happening to a lot of families. Selfishness comes in, it's about me or what I could take, but selflessness. So that's what we embody here.
I love that, and I love that. I love that the box has Matthew 10. Which is one of the most like. It's. I mean, obviously, anything Christ said was just incredibly powerful, and we're still talking about it. But that passage and that verse has always like mystified me, and it complicates Christ in a fascinating way.
Yeah, you know, coming up to that verse, you know, it's a funny thing. I wasn't always a Christian. I became a Christian, and the Lord had to bring me down to rock bottom. You know, I was talking about I was in college, and I left college, and I thought I was going to do my own thing. And you know, once you you know, become homeless and you just live out of your car, you come to realize that, you know, I made some pretty bad choices, and you know, maybe I should you know, give Jesus Christ a chance. You know, let him work. So I did. I said, Lord, if you can change my life and make it better, I will always honor you. I will always praise you. Whatever I do, I'll give glory to you, because it's not me. I already know what I can do. I can make it into the back of a car. That's about it. And so that passage is so powerful because, and it means a lot to me, because what he's saying is, I come not to bring peace, but the sword. And there's a funny thing about a sword. You know, a double-edged sword, you know, there's two things that can happen. You know, with the sword, you can set the captives free. You can cut their chains, and then they're set free. But at the same time, you know, hearing that truth, you know, you're either set free, or you hear that truth, and it's a mortal wound to you because you don't want to change.
Wow.
And that's where it doesn't bring peace to those who don't want to change, and yet it brings freedom and peace to those who choose to believe the truth. And we see that today, you know, in our politics, you know, with Trump, with everything that's going on. You know, take it as you will. You know, one thing that gave me peace about this election was when that first assassination attempt happened, you know, the odds of him turning his head so that bullet doesn't hit him is like, I think someone said it's the equivalent of being struck by lightning 10 times in a row.
Wow.
It's not chance. God made judgment. God said, you know what? That's my man. Yeah. That's the one. And once I saw that, I said, he's going to win the election. God doesn't make judgment. God doesn't do this and not have the end result come in. That's why I knew he was going to be president. You know, he already went through his trial. That was sold 2020 up to that moment. Everything was coming after him. It was like the story of Job.
Yeah.
And you look at that, and then, you know, what was the one thing that Satan couldn't do? Couldn't kill him.
Yeah.
He could do everything he wanted to. He could do everything. And when they decided to kill him, God makes judgment. And then everything changed from that point forward. From that point forward, you can mark it. All the cases start dropping. Everything started dropping. God's hands started moving in there. And you can just see it. If you have eyes to see, you can see that. And
Yeah.
so that's what happens to everybody's life if they make the choice, hey, I'm going to follow God. No matter what trial, no matter what you're going through, it may be tough. There's a lot of things Satan can do to you, but he can't kill
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. That's I there really isn't when people talk about that first assassination attempt, it is wacky to have any other sort of explanation. It just doesn't make logical sense. It's illogical to argue anything else but the
Right?
but divine intervention. There were angels right there with him. That is the
Amen.
logical explanation. Um, that I love that explanation. And you want to talk about your spiritual journey a little bit more? Is that okay?
Yeah, no, that's fine. Um, well, going to college, college does a great job of making atheists.
Yep,
So
that's
so
right.
you
Yeah,
go there, and it's just the truth. I was all about science. My scores, me, doing what I wanted to do, and you know thinking that God was something hokey. And maybe these are just fairy tales. I grew up Catholic, and thinking, well, these are fairy tales that we used to hear, and this is what goes on, and that's nice. I've never seen the power of God. Like, I never had a personal relationship. So what does that mean to me? You know, I mean, why am I
yeah,
going to church? So I can tell some priest over there my sins, and then that way I can take communion. What does that even mean to me? So
yeah,
I wanted things tangible. I wanted things that I could touch and feel and say, that's real. And it wasn't until I started hitting rock bottom that I started to change and started to say, the things that I touch isn't always real. You think
yeah,
it's one way, you think it's tangible in this way, and that it's going to give you happiness, it's going to give you peace. And what ends up happening is that you just have a big hole, you lose everything because you're walking a path that isn't right. And when you get to the end of yourself, that's when you finally decide, what else do I have to lose? What else do I have to lose? So I might as well give him a chance. Let's see if he'll show up. And he did. You know, Met my beautiful wife. We got married about 2 years later. I had to work a job at Dillard's at first, you know, selling women's shoes. I know a lot about women's shoes that I never wanted to know in my life. So I'm just
that's
telling you that.
amazing. That's
and
amazing.
and then it's like the prodigal son. You come back and then you want to go ahead and get into the family business and start learning knife making and doing that. And there's something so satisfying about working with your hands. And every time I'm working, I'm just having a conversation with God because He ended up
Yeah,
starting being my best friend. And I'm doing this work, I'm asking Him for things, and He's just telling me through the work. That's the thing. Faith is hard work.
hmm,
It is an action word. Faith is an action word. And so, you know, once I started working, I'm asking him, what can I do better in this knife? What can I do that? Or what can I do here? And we started improving these processes, started going to shows. The Lord had me meet some incredible people, in my life, going to all these shows and meeting some really interesting people that are on fire for the Lord or ministering to Him. Even though I'm a baby Christian, and and really growing that relationship from end to end. And now today, I'm on fire and passionate for the Lord. And this business of Dawson Knives is here to glorify Him. There's a passage that, well, everything that you do, do it for the glory of God.
yeah,
And so that's that. We have that in our shop. It's hung up, and so that way our employees know that, and that way, our family remember who we are and what we're doing. And that has led me now to our what are our causes. One thing that I'm very passionate about is abortion. I'm totally against it,
yeah,
100%.
yep,
There's no compromise to it. There's nothing to it.
yeah,
It's really comes up to a debate, and people don't understand this. And just a little bit here. I used to be a Democrat, so just to let you know, when I was in college, of course, you're an atheist, you're a Democrat, and
yep,
so
yeah. That's it.
so I'm not that way now. I'm a Republican, and I'm a God-fearing man, a
Yeah,
Protestant. And so, but one thing that about abortion and why it's so evil in a way. First off, it helps the trafficking trade, child trafficking trade, because Now we have states that just don't have any regulation. Anybody can do an abortion. And so, these poor children that are going through this, they just abort them. And there's no backlash, no accountability. And number two is, we look at this and this state, and I mean, this country has always had a battle. And that's the thing. The fundamental truth is that if God created all men to be equal, then life is precious. That means life has rights. The Democrats, even from back then, and I know this because I used to be one, then it's all about property. See, that was the whole thing that we had back then, with the slaves. They said it was property. The Republicans, when they came out, they had a term from them back in the 1850s. It was called radical Republicans. That's what they used to call them. The Democrats called them radical Republicans. And you know why? Because they believed in God so much, and they said there's no compromise. They have rights. They are just like us, and we are not going to give in. We're not going to do anything. This is where we stand. And they called them radical Republicans. They attacked them. I mean, physically, some beat some of the congressmen. Today, we know them as abolitionists. See, that is the term we use today. But back then, they were known as radical Republicans. And it was always this thing. Life is not property. Life is never property. You cannot have life have meaning and worth without God. That's why this nation was founded on God. I love history. My wife is studying history at Oxford, and she's studying history at GCU. And so you bring up these things that people don't even know anymore. This country prayed. Abraham Lincoln, very interesting thing about that, because he was a Republican. He prayed. They had a nationwide statute that said, and it was April 30th, 1863, for fasting and prayer for the sin of slavery.
Wow.
So the North did that. And because they were losing the war. They were not winning the war. They were losing the war. Then on May 2nd, 1863, Stonewall Jackson gets shot by his own men.
Wow.
Right after that prayer. And you know what? General Lee said, I wish it would have been me that got shot, not Stonewall Jackson. And you know what happened shortly after that? You get into Gettysburg, and that was the turning of the war. That was it. And the biggest problem he had, he couldn't communicate to his troops. And God made a decision because they repented. The North repented with the prayer of fasting. You can look it up, April 30th, 1863. So you get to abortion today, and it's the same thing. It's the same argument. The Democrats are always making this. And the argument is life property?
Yes.
Is it the property of a woman? Or does life come from God and says that it has inalienable rights? And that's why you have these court cases that rule for abortion, because if you allow it at the beginning, at the conception of life, to say that it is property, that means all your rights and everything is null and void because you're property of something.
Mm.
And that's the powerful legal argument that people don't talk about and they don't look at. And so what happens there? Now, from the beginning of life, that says all life now is property. See, they're just circumventing it. And that's why they're so diehard on this abortion. That's why they're so diehard. That's why they fight so hard for this. Because it gives them legal grounds to take away all your rights. Your Second Amendment right, gone. Your First Amendment right, gone. Because you're property now. And property doesn't have rights under the Constitution. You see, and that is a reason why I think it's one of the most evil things besides murder. But what the legalistic challenge is what they've been doing ever since their inception.
No, that's fascinating. I haven't even thought of it from the property perspective, because we're on the same page here. It's what I've always seen is like them the like idea of the choice, but it's like, well, there's a very important person's choice who's not being considered, which is not being considered. I was always kind of stayed out of that, but was always pro-life. And then the more I thought of it, I just thought, man, this is wrong. This is evil.
Oh, absolutely. And it's funny because they used my body, my choice. Back then in
Yeah.
the 1800s, they used to say my slave, my choice. My choice to let
Wow.
him free or not. It never changes. And it's funny because if you look at the Christian perspective, Jesus Christ said, "This is my body, which I freely give to you."
Hmm.
Satan says, "This is my body, my choice."
Wow.
See, it's a difference. And that's the difference of life. Jesus Christ said, "There's no greater love than this, than he who lays down his life for his friend."
Yeah.
See, mothers, when they were giving birth, they would lay their life down for that child. Basically, it brings them to the point of almost death, and then they
Yeah.
give birth. It's a miracle. It's an amazing thing. They literally are laying down their life for their children. And
And
now
it
we
is a
take that
rebirth.
away. It is a
For
rebirth. That's a very good point.
when you become a parent, I mean, that's when I had my faith journey is, I'm pretty. I've always had faith, but when I became a parent, it was like the scales came off my eyes,
Yeah.
and I holding my first child for the first time, I said I had all of my doubts were gone in that moment, and I understood. I understood on a very small level what the cross means,
Yeah.
what the sacrifice, why God would make that sacrifice, and I can't even if I begin to think about the passion, I it shakes me as it should. I mean,
Yeah.
um, but as a parent, it's just there are times when it's like unbearable to think about what he went through.
Yeah, it's a funny thing. Once, same thing with me, because once I had my first son, I mean, that really helped start solidifying my journey into Christ.
Yeah.
And because now I'm not living for myself anymore, I'm living for
Yep.
someone else. And then
Yeah.
that's that mental change. I got to live for that person now, and I'm very happy to do it because I want the best for them. And that's what God wants for us. And watching that movie, The Passion, you bring that up, and it's a very impactful movie. And in fact, they're filming right now the sequel to that. So Mel Gibson's filming that right now with Jim Caviezel. We happened to meet Jim Caviezel just recently. So we talked to
Fantastic.
him. Oh yeah, he's an amazing guy. He's an
Yeah,
incredible guy.
he's
So
great.
oh yeah, we talked to him for about 15 minutes. So we talked to him. He's a hunter, so he loves hunting.
Nice.
He's a survivalist, so he's about taking care of his family, food storage, and everything. So he loves knives, so that's how we talked about knives. He has one of our knives. He's a really incredible person, but he's passionate about God. That was another part of our conversation. He's very passionate about God, and he's passionate about these causes, both abortion and child trafficking. And he talks about a little bit about the passion and going through all that. Almost brought him to death. Just that trial of going through just filming the movie and trying to get the most realistic aspect of Jesus Christ. He had two open heart surgeries during that.
Wow.
He almost died, pneumonia in the lungs. He got hit by the cat o' nine. The cross hit him. I mean, he had dislocated shoulder. He suffered all these things similar to what Christ did. He got hit by lightning. I mean, it's like
Wow.
he went through this whole thing. And he
Yeah.
said, but he wouldn't have had such an appreciation for who God was unless he went through that. And so there was this foundation that we went to, is called Heartland Ranch out here. They're building a ranch for children that have been rescued from trafficking and
Wow.
trying to give them a life again. And so he came to speak there. And he's very passionate about that. And that's one of our causes. And he talks about this correlation. Abortion ties in directly into child trafficking, and how child trafficking wouldn't be able to do what it's doing if we didn't have abortion in this nation. We are the number one users of child trafficking in the world. It's a $150
Wow.
billion industry. And so that's why on our website we have the spear page up there. So there's someone who tries to rescue these children. There's a lot that is going on. And so, as parents, we have this connection to say we want to do something that's right.
Yeah.
We want to make the world a better place. And so we try and protect our children, but we don't want to create a country that allows this to happen, because at some point in time, it's going to bump into you as a family member, as a dad, as a mom at home.
I love that. And I love that is like, it's not sewn into the business model for you. It's at the forefront. This idea that, like, yes, you are making an impeccable product, a very, very good, high quality product. But it's also like there's it's evangelical at the same time. Like, really, there's evangelizing there, and I that's how I feel. I cannot, I would not work at a company that isn't Christian, openly and Christian on the at the very front of things.
Yeah, I mean, all of us are united in our family in this. And it's been a journey. We didn't start that way. We became that way the more our relationship grew with Christ. And our goal is to make the best product that we can. I mean, we go out of our way. We try and source the best materials, and we source everything here in the United States. So all our raw materials come here, and then we make it here. But at the end of the day, I mean, anyone could post a Christian banner and say, "Oh, I'm Christian." It's like Madonna wearing a cross. I mean, that, that doesn't make you Christian. It's who you are and what you do, and it's what you stand for, even if it's not popular. Like we talked about slavery, even back then, the radical Republicans standing up against slavery was not popular, not at all. And today, abortion, a lot of people think that's okay, and it's not a popular stance to go against it. But you know what? Doing what is right is more important to me, and to build a better future for my family and my kids, because, one evil, you open the door, lets in all kinds of evil. And that's what we see today. We open one door, and now we have everything under the sun being pushed on us, into our kids, into our schools, and into our lives. And we don't want to be victims of that. That's not what America is about. I come on my mom's side. My mom came from Guadalajara, Mexico. And so she immigrated here legally. She's a staunch Republican. And she, tells me that, love this country because there's no place like it on earth.
Yeah.
There's no place to go. The reason why everyone's coming here, because this is it. This is the only place of hope. Yeah. And that's why we have to stand for our children. We have to fight. I have a great appreciation for this nation because it's given me this opportunity to come from a car to this business today.
Yeah, I love that framing, because there is something that's just undeniably special. And the first assassination attempt of Trump it evinced that. There was that moment. Tucker Carlson describes it really well. It was like, that was one of those moments where we were going to go right, or we were going to go left, and thankfully we went right. But there is the possibility of going left was right there. It was like millimeters away, but it was such a confirmation that we took the right path. And it was like, so this is one nation under God. We are blessed. We are a Christian nation.
Yeah, and everyone's coming together. People are starting to come together. This is the first time that, seeing the Republican Party. I mean, I'll tell you what, a lot of the leaders, a lot of these guys that are in were former Democrats. Come on.
Yep.
Look at this. I'm a former Democrat. Look at this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what? We're passionate. I'll tell you why we're passionate, because we know what the other side looks like, and that's why we left. We don't want that. So we're passionate to fight for this side, because we know that that's the only chance and hope we have to have the nation that we come to love. We don't want to go this other direction. They went to a direction that you can just feel it in your soul is wrong. It's just wrong. Yes. You can't put, you can't peg it. It's wrong, because they're not standing for any of the values that they used to have. That they have a word for that. It's called apostate. They're not standing for any of the values that they used to have, that made them the Democratic Party. Used to be the party for the working guy. Used to be the party for health. Used to be the party for all this. And you know what? They all sold out for money. They all sold out for
Yep.
money. And so you can peg it, apostate. They've changed. Now we're going to this party to say, hey, you're giving us an opportunity to bring back the America that we all came to love, that we all felt safe in, that we all could worship whom we want to worship, but mainly to give honor to God, and to be prosperous again, to bring our jobs back here, to make it a place that where you can raise your children without fear. And we have all these resources, and why are we giving them away? Why are we doing this? So, just being in manufacturing, I mean, I've seen a lot of businesses recently, these under this Biden administration, or we could call Obama administration, whatever.
2.0.
But a lot of companies that we have dealt business with going out of business that have been around since 1900s that are American. Ton of them.
Wow.
And, one of them right now, one of our, famous steel producers here, Crucible, is fighting for its life. It's been around since 1909 and almost out of business. 150 employees, and saying that they're going to be shutting their doors possibly in 3 months if something doesn't change.
Wow.
And, that's what we're losing. And people don't always know that. And that's what we're fighting for. When you buy a knife from Dawson Knives, you're not just buying an awesome quality knife, which is great. That's the cherry on top. But what you're buying is buying back into the American dream, building back family businesses, building back people who are fighting for these causes, and standing on the side of right no matter what happens. And, knowing that there's hope still left in this nation. And that's what we were talking about with that assassination attempt. And look at this coalition that was put under Trump. They just all came together. God unites. That's the whole point. God unites. Look at God unites both sides. The old Democrats with the Republicans coming together for one purpose, to make this nation better again and to fulfill those promises that they made that they cannot fulfill in the other party anymore.
Yeah, it's only division, which is one of the strongest characteristics of the evil one, is divide, separate, empower the self at the cost of everything else. And you mentioned we've talked about this in a couple different ways. Like the left has become so anti-children, and even right down, and it's always framed from autonomy and liberation and all that, just this movement of the Democrat as women having this profession over, don't have a child. The child's going to weigh you down. But there's so many things that are so important that happen when you have a child. So that is, to me, is an ancient, a very ancient thing that's happening on the left. This fight, and it's always, they think of it as new and as progress, but this sort of it might even be a hatred for children. And to me, that's about as bad as it gets.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned, about progress. They always think this is new. This is something radical, and the old saying, there's nothing new under the sun. I think that, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, actually. And so what you're looking at here is that what they're doing goes all the way back to ancient times.
Yeah.
What they're doing goes all the way back. You can trace it through Babylon, Greece, Rome. They did child sacrifice. They did the same thing, abortion on demand. They did child sacrifice. It's so funny that they would do, parades in the street. Their priests would be transgender. So they had transgender priests. This is the Babylons with celebrating Astaroth, all that stuff. It's all historic. There's nothing new under the sun. It's just coming back. No. The only thing in the way, and it's always been in the way, is Christianity. Yeah. Christianity defeated all that. That was gone, and now we're bringing it back. Now we're trying to bring this into our homes, into our schools, and I'll tell you what's going to end up happening, and it's just like all those nations. What happened to all those nations? They fell. They're gone. They're not here anymore. And when you start bringing that back, you start bringing in, your morals, your society, everything just starts failing. You can always track the failing of a society right at the moment that these things of depravity come into a society. And so, it's trying to break the natural bond between mother and child, between what is right and what is wrong. We know, I mean, come on, they always say follow the science. And then yet they won't follow the science that there's two genders. I mean, you can look at it. You have to
Yeah,
convince
yeah,
the mind in
yeah.
this altered reality. I mean, and I'm not trying to be mean. It's just, you have to
No,
do a
no, it's
lot of brainwashing to
yes.
make you deny the truth that you see in front of you.
Yeah, even skeletal systems. There are
Yeah.
two. There's a skeleton that's female, and then there's a skeleton that's male, and they're different. And there are no transgender skeletons.
No.
like,
I mean,
and but you're right.
it doesn't exist.
No, and there's so much mental gymnastics that has to take place. Like, oh, on the social level and construction, they have to construct so much. Yeah, it's we truly have dodged a bullet, and quite
Yeah.
literally. So
Yeah.
uh, it's such a relief. I know I keep coming back to this, but it's a relief that evil didn't completely overtake the nation.
I agree. And that's why I said in the beginning, hope. Hope.
Yeah.
We have hope again. We have hope that everything is going to be walking in a place where God wants to lead us. God did this by a mighty hand. I mean, you can study history. When God's hand comes in, it's a mighty change. Every
Yeah.
time God's hand has come into this nation, it's been a mighty change. And you can just track it. You can see his man in there. And it's always polarizing. Back to that saying, I come not to bring peace, but the sword. The most polarizing figure that brought the most change in the world was Jesus Christ. You either loved him or hate him. There was those that hated him and they wanted to kill him. And there were those that loved him. But he brought the biggest change in the world. He's the most polarizing figure in the world. And even today, because as a Christian stands for his values, he's standing on Jesus Christ, and that's polarizing.
Yeah, it's so powerful. And it goes back to this idea, this great reassurance that in the end we win, but it is a real slog to get there, and it is so devastating sometimes. And there are you have these moments of Job where it's just like a landslide of evil is
Yeah.
about to overtake you, and you make it out. Um, Let me ask you. Sorry to pivot radically.
No, I'm good.
What is so special about MagnaCut steel?
Good question. I get asked that a lot because we've used a lot of different steels over the year. But MagnaCut is actually made by a good friend of mine, Laren Thomas. We knew his dad, Devin Thomas, and his brother, Darren Thomas. They made Damascus steel. They actually were here in Arizona, and now one's in Vegas. But we knew him going to shows. We would see this, and so when COVID hit, Laren was at home. And so, he's got a doctorate in metallurgy, and so he came up with this formula because he loves knives. This formula for a stainless steel that is like a hard carbon steel. So it doesn't have as much chromium as a normal stainless. But because of the way that the chromium carbides are not free, they all bind with an element that he's put in, and the different alloys that put in MagnaCut makes it really strong. Gives you incredible stainless properties. I mean, if you heat treat it right, up to 30 days resistance to salt water.
Wow.
And it's easy to resharpen as, say, your old, tool steel blade, out in the field. And so it has all these attributes to it that helps it bridge the gap between a stainless, a high carbon, and an alloy steel. And so now you've got this steel that's really strong and tough. And so we love using it. Now, is it fun to heat treat? Heck no. I mean, it's one of the hardest things that we ever tried to heat treat. I mean, we had so many failures, and that was another thing that we had to pray about just to get this heat treated. But we found our own heat treat. So our heat treat is proprietary. So we do our own differential heat treat. We can actually put a hard line on it. So if you see Japanese swords, they have that line, that hamon line. We can put that on MagnaCut. And so we get this incredible property that allows you to skin out about 4 or 5 deer without honing. Sometimes it depends, if you're hitting bone all the time, it depends your method. But we skinned out one full elk, and we could still go for probably another elk and a half or two.
Wow.
And so it's incredible steel. And the other thing is, it's made in this country. They make that steel here in the United States.
That's fantastic, and that's such an important part of the company too. So, did you guys? When did you start making swords? Was that at the beginning?
That's a good question. So Barry actually started making swords. I'm gonna say 1985. So he started making swords, and he loves the Japanese culture. He was stationed there for a while. And so he really got into the Japanese culture, and so he started making these beautiful Japanese katanas, wakasashis, tantos, and so we started building a name for ourselves. We became, in the United States, one of the top 5 sword makers in the United States. We've won awards for it. Even today, there's almost no sword makers in the United States. There's a couple, but they can only make like small swords, whatever the machines can do. We actually still make those by hand. So each one of those swords that you see is done by hand. I mean, grinding them is a bear. It's almost like a ship rocking. You have to go from one end up to the other down on your grinder. You got to work out a little bit, and you get your forearms working, and because you're pushing on a hard piece of steel, and it's really a love of passion and labor, and we just put so much care into every single sword. But now we do European swords. We're getting ready to release a new one that's coming out. It's called the Proclamation. It's based on a gladius style, so it's going to be pretty cool. So our swords are very unique. We've done a lot of tests with them. We've cut tatami mats, so we've had people do that, and they cut them really well. But we've also done bend tests. Some of our swords go up to 60 degrees. So they are no joke. They are made to be used, but they're beautiful representations of art and beautiful representations of a time that we're losing. There's hardly any sword makers now.
I love that. Really sums up one of the company's core values. On top of everything we've talked about, is this: you're moving forward, but you're also holding the past and allowing that to continue.
Yeah, we have we have our factory side with CNC machines that do a lot of our production blades, but it's still hand ground. So they're still hand ground, and they're still hand fitted and slight shaping on the handles. But we wanted to make sure on the manufacturing side that it was just like handmade. I am super picky. My poor programmers and everything that had to go through that. But I mean, I'm not here to make a factory knife. You look at all these factory knives, there's a lot of them that come out. There's new players on the market that come out, and you look at the quality, and it's just about how fast they can make a knife. It's only about showmanship. It's only about, just getting our name out there. But, at the end, you're not ending up with a lifetime product. And so we're very passionate on that end at the factory, is that making that lifetime product and really showing the guys, they have to come over to the handmade side. Now we have the whole custom shop. We have 3 generations working in that custom shop. We got Barry, who's 75 years old, and he goes out there every now and then, to make something. And he just released some cool little, like, old-timey Skagel knives. And then you have second generation, my brother, Dennis Cook. He goes out there, and he's like, he does all these swords. He's doing all these Western old-timey style buoys with stag or ginsbuck on them. And then you have my nephew, Sam, and he's grinding these swords. The guy is about 25 years old, and he is one of the best grinders in the world. I mean, he can grind swords, he can grind anything at that age, and he's learning to fit subas and do all this little work and work in Damascus and forging. And so we are really pushing the bounds of custom handmade, still learning how to do that and keeping that alive, sewing leather sheaths and doing all that. And coming up with the future of knives through manufacturing techniques on the CNC side to make them more like handmade, but to give you so many different attributes. Like that one knife, the smuggler, you have that hole in the blade. And people are like, why is that hole in the blade? Yeah, why is that there? Well, if you've ever been in a survival situation and all you have is that little blade, it better do a lot for you. And so it better, because that's all you have. So you better be able to survive off of it. So there's a lot of little features built into that little knife. And one, having the hole at the top, you got this kind of deep sharpening choil, then you got a hole in the back. And that allows you to make a spear. So you can make a spear. We have a video that's out, but that'll be coming on the website that shows people how to make a spear. I'll tell you what, your chances, if you got a river or something, catching fish is a lot easier. Now people say, why don't you use wooden spears? You can whittle out wooden spear. Why would I waste my edge? My edge is so important to me, because if I do that and now it's dull, that's going to be a difficult day for me. So I can use a spear, throw it in, and with MagnaCut, it's not hurting my point. I'm not messing around. I still got a good amount of blade to work with. And then we even build in that little sharpening choil, a fire starter place. So you can strike right there, and that's why it's got those little bumps. It'll strike really good, and you're ready to go. And then the back end has a screwdriver. So you can change your sheath positions. You can, pound or impact something with it. And so everything is built into this knife thinking about the person, not about what's faster for me to produce as a manufacturer so I can make the most amount of money. So that's always our credence, is thinking about the person. That's what we promise. That's our covenant with our customers.
I love that. That's so I have what's the reason for this? It's like a slight bend.
Yes, a drop point. So the good thing is, let's say you're skinning out an animal, so it drops down. The one thing you want to do is to control your point, and that way, by dropping down like that, you're not going to hit any vital organs or anything that you don't want to hit that'll make a mess, and then spoil your meat. So the drop point gives you that ergonomic feel, allows your fingers, so it follows your finger, so you can go right by the point. And then the back end is like a little hammer. It's exposed tang, so you can hammer. What I do, I keep in the sheath. I can hammer tent stakes, do all kinds of little things with it. I can break glass if I need to. So that way it gives me some added functionality to the knife.
What is this little part right here? This little rivet?
Yeah, the little choil. So that makes it easier to resharpen. So if you ever have to resharpen it, you can start there. So that way it's not thick. So what happens is, if you don't have that, it comes in like this and then gets thin. So it starts spreading out, and you get this weird high grind, and it makes it difficult for you to sharpen. By having just that little choil, makes it easier to see your grind and an easy starting place without messing up your knife.
You guys are just doing so great, man. I love every aspect of what you're doing. I still have a million questions for you. So we'll probably revisit, but for now I'll need to just go through all this and add this to the profile, unless there's anything that I'm just like completely missing right now that I need to ask you.
No, I think we covered a lot of things and who we are and what I'm passionate about. And Ryan, I have to tell you, Kevin, this has been amazing. I've had a wonderful time here. I mean, you guys are amazing. I've always loved the Blaze. My dad, and I'm going to share one last little story.
Oh, yeah.
My dad got me on to the Blaze. He loved Glenn Beck. I'll tell you what, he was a Democrat that turned to a Republican, so he got me on there. That was the first person that he listened to was Glenn Beck. Nice. And it also helped with my conversion, too. And so he was listening to him, and I remember he was a Blaze member, and I remember in 2020 is when he really started getting into it. And I think it was June, he told me, son, get a membership. You need to do this. Is June 2020. Get a membership. You can't always go by what I say because maybe someday I won't be here, and I want you to be informed. Be informed about things. And I said, okay. You like Glenn Beck? He's like, oh yeah, great guy. And he's awesome.
Yep.
I'm glad he's doing his own thing. He left Fox and he's doing his own thing here. And I said, okay, well, I'll start listening. So in July, he got COVID, the 4th of July, and he passed away August 6th.
Oh,
and
man.
I was so grateful that he put me on that path. That was one of the last things that he told me was to get a membership to the Blaze. And I'm so grateful for that. So I just wanted to share that it has, the Blaze has been impactful in my life. And what's one of my, it's kind of weird, but it's one of my dad's wishes that I be informed. And I've been very grateful for that because it's made me passionate about, where I'm coming from as far as being a Republican. And so I thank you guys for your work. It meant a lot to my dad. That whole COVID thing was a total farce. My dad shouldn't have passed away, but that's a different story. But besides that, he thought a lot about you guys. So I wanted to share that so you guys would know.
God bless you, and God bless your father, man. What a beautiful story. Man, I'm so sorry for your loss. That what a tragedy.
But that's what family's for.
Yeah.
Me and my brothers, we come together. We pay for my mom's house. We take care of her. The government's not going to take care of her, and they don't.
Yeah.
She gets this pathetic stipend from Social Security. And so we pay for her house. We take care of her. And it brought our family closer. It's really sad that I lost my dad. I loved him. I was the closest to him, and I was named after him. And but you know what? I had so much respect for him, and I was so glad that he led me down the path that I am now. When I was younger, I always thought he was an idiot, and as I got older, I understood that my dad's a really smart guy. And God took that tragedy, and he brought all his brothers closer together, and we all came to my mom, and we take care of her. It helps us to step outside of ourselves.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's funny. So I wrote for Glenn for 6 years, and I was still writing for him at that point. I think it was last year that I moved over to the Blaze full time. But yeah, I wrote a lot of his, I did a lot of, and of course Glenn is a genius. So it's, when you're a writer for him, you're more like saying, here's an idea, or you're doing research for him. And he just brings it to life. But yeah, I was writing for him for his radio show and for his podcast at that point. So what a cool, like you and I had already connected at that point.
Yes.
Through that medium, through Glenn's words. Life is just so beautiful, and to deny that there is just God's, like you've said many times throughout this, God's hand moving and guiding it. I think that's one of the most irresponsible things you can do, is believe that God isn't guiding all of this.
Exactly. That's the funny thing, is that God, he's an amazing conductor of this beautiful symphony of life. And he intertwines everything. I mean, he brings it full circle. And nothing is lost that isn't gained. My dad passed away, but what gained was my appreciation and so much there, but it also gained me finding the Blaze and following that throughout all these years because of that. And that's why I have a commitment. That's why I was so jazzed when you guys wanted me to do an interview with us. And I was just like, man, finally, if only my dad could be here to see this. I mean, he would flip out. And and that's the coolest thing. That's God's symphony. You never know where it's going to go. You never know what's going to lead, but you're enjoying the sound. And sometimes, there's some hard parts in it, but sometimes there's this beautiful end and this beautiful music that all comes together at the end. And so I'm just so grateful, Kevin, that you decided to have me on here. It's such a blessing to me. And you guys are doing amazing work. I'm one example of that. So God bless you guys.
God bless you too, John. Thank you.
Thank you.